All right, so while high school appears to be on lunch hour, so I apologize for any loud music or tire squealing you hear. Let's discuss droughts. The Washington Capitals tonight could end a drought. They may come off this board. So who's on the clock? That's where Leaf fans are like, really? Yep, 1967, and they haven't been in the finals since 1967 either. Conference finals 1978, 1993, 1994, 1999, and 2002. But I still say this team's on the right track. And I know that may sound crazy, but I still think the Toronto Maple Leafs are on the right track, and that the core that they have, the players that they've put together on that team, I still think have the makings of a future Stanley Cup champion. They are probably a defenseman short. They might need to shore up at some positions up front and just get the overall depth up to where it needs to be. And maybe they need that one veteran guy that can come in like Lanny McDonald did for these guys in 1989. He was there a few years before that. But either the point is, they need that player. They need their Lanny McDonald. And I don't think they have it yet. St. Louis. There's just a no there because they've never won it. Their last Stanley Cup Finals, of course, 1970. They were in the Stanley Cup Finals the first 3 years, kind of by default, and I've been over that a lot. Conference championships, conference finals, they made it to conference finals in 72, 86, 2001, and 2016. So about every 15 years they go on a run, and they don't make it to the finals. There's 14 years, 15 years, 15 years. So 2031 might be their next shot, if you believe in that. I don't. But St. Louis is one of those teams that I'm not sure whether they're moving in the direction of contending or if they're moving in direction of a retool or if maybe this core needs to be, like, who knows? What is St. Louis? Are they a Stanley Cup champion? I don't project them out to be that. But because these guys have changed the rules, I could look like a fool as soon as 2 months from now. St. Louis goes out, they find a way to get Tavares because whatever reason, and maybe they go to the Stanley Cup next year, or maybe they don't need a Tavares. Maybe they go to the Stanley Cup next year and they win it. Vancouver, there's a no. It's a hard no on Vancouver. They were last in the Stanley Cup Finals, of course, in 2011, famously. In a couple of days, I'll get to the 2011 Stanley Cup finalists video. And really, honestly, Vancouver, to me, does not look like a Stanley Cup winner anytime soon. And I don't see them coming off the board anytime soon. I think if Toronto comes off, I think that'll increase pressure on the Vancouver organization and on the Aquilinis to get a winner out there somehow. Also in the zero category, expansion brethren, the Buffalo Sabres. So they both came into the league in 1970, and they have both been unable to get there. They get to the finals. Buffalo got to the finals in 1999. They also got to the finals in 75. Of course, Vancouver got to the finals in 94 and 82 as well. Conference finals since those finals. Buffalo's been in the conference finals in 2006 and 2007. But now there's been a long, dark period for this team. Now they're going to get Darlene at the draft. And while there's some saying, I don't know, maybe they won't draft Darlene. Those are crazy people, and you don't want to talk to them. Buffalo may have the core needed to eventually lead them to the promised land, because why not? We're in a crazy time. Now, the interesting thing is, so what I'm saying is that with Toronto where they are as a franchise and with Buffalo having pieces that you need. Now, a healthy Jack Eichel goes a long way. Rasmus Dahlin on the point goes a long way. There are other pieces they need to get there. I'm just saying they're trending in the right direction. St. Louis, I'm not sure with, and Vancouver, I don't see it yet. Philly, if the Capitals come off the board as soon as tonight, Philly moves up. Philly hasn't won a cup since 1975, which doesn't feel like that long ago, and then, that's just part of getting older, where you're like, well, I remember when Philly was, oh, yeah, wow. Not that I remember them being cup champs, I'm not that old, but I remember them with relevance. I remember Bobby Clark playing. I remember when they were a feared team. I remember all of that. Their last Stanley Cup final, of course, was 2010. They haven't been in a conference final since then. So Philly, goaltending. And that's really where we're at with them. So I don't see Philly coming off the board anytime soon. But They do have some pieces that I like, and we'll see. Arizona's on the board. They've never won, and they've never been in the finals. They reached the conference final in 2012. And when you look at this franchise and where it is and its history, this is why when I look at where this team is now, these Winnipeg Jets, I personally think that the road that this team is on beats any road that team ever would have gone on if that franchise had stayed in Winnipeg. And I'm saying that as kindly as possible. I feel bad for Coyotes fans because it's like, hey, your team's been really bad for a really long time. Why aren't you supporting it? Hey, why don't you guys go out and buy all the tickets to watch all the games where your team loses every night? Your team sucks. But you don't support it, so you don't deserve it. Weird. Gets there every time. Arizona needs a run. Arizona needs to make the playoffs, and they need to make a run. They need to at least get back to conference finals. They need to stir up some kind of excitement in the desert, because odds are that Washington finishes off Vegas, they move up into this top row, and that's not a spot you want to be in. The Islanders, 1983 was their last Stanley Cup, 1993 was their last conference finals, and it has just been a descent since then. I think Lou Lamoriello being there will help, but there's so many moving parts. They need to keep Tavares, they need to keep everybody happy, and they need to fix what's wrong with the blue line and in goal. The good news is, with Lou Lamoriello as GM, he's pretty good at picking up goaltenders. Whether it was Marty Brodeur or Corey Schneider, he's pretty good at finding a goalie when he needs one and finding a guy who's going to last for a long time. The Flames being on the board makes me feel old. Just being honest. 1989, their last Stanley Cup. 2004 was their last finals. And it is weird to see the Battle of Alberta in a whole other light. The Battle of Alberta dominated the mid-'80s. In the playoffs, there was nothing that was better than the Battle of Alberta. Whether it was a five-game series or a 7-game series, they were some of the most intense hockey games I ever watched. And these teams really genuinely didn't like each other. And now they're 1 year separated from their last Stanley Cups. 1990 was the year for the Oilers, 1989 for Calgary. I will say this, and last finals for Oilers was in 2006. Of course, that's the next season after Calgary's 2004 finals. So these teams are tied. They're tied to one another. Connor McDavid means that I have not written off the Oilers as a future Stanley Cup champion. And I won't. Because when these great players come in, there's always a debate. He's not that good. He's not that good. I heard it about Yzerman. I heard it about Crosby. I heard it about Ovechkin. Now everybody agrees, oh yeah, Conn Smythe if they win tonight. For the most part, some of us, myself included, think Kuznetsov would work, but we totally get why Ovechkin likely gets the Conn Smythe after everything he's been through. But every great player before that first Stanley Cup has to deal with, well, he's not good enough. Gretzky, he's too skinny. He's not really built for the NHL hockey. I mean, you look at NHL hockey, you look at the Islanders' big bruising team, and that's not too long after the Broad Street Bullies. You really need that if you're going to win. These Oilers, with all this skill and all this offense, they'll never win anything. So Connor McDavid's going to hear that, and there's going to be people that say that, and honestly, eventually at some point, they're going to have to put a sock in it, because McDavid's going to win big. He will drag that team somewhere in the playoffs, and it could be as soon as next year, and that sounds crazy, but with the right additions on the blue line, and if their goaltending's consistent and they don't have to worry about a backup this year, if Talbot can get some rest and they have a really good backup, yeah, Edmonton can get there. As for the Flames, their core's been trash-talked a lot, and some of these guys have to show a little more intensity next year than they showed down the stretch this year, to be honest. I think the most disheartening thing, if I was a Flames fan, would have been that lack of heart in some of those games when they desperately needed a win and just came out flat. So I put the Oilers ahead of the Flames in terms of whether or not they're going to break that. I'm not going to say it's a curse, but just break that horrible run they've been on in the playoffs. But the Flames, I think, have the better goaltending. We'll see. I think Talbot's going to have a bounce-back year next year, but again, he's got to get more rest for that to happen. San Jose's never won it. I'm surprised they're on this list, to be honest. I'm surprised that when I did 12 teams that San Jose shows up on here. Their last Stanley Cup Finals, 2016. So they're closer than a lot of these other teams, or are they? The way that they lost this year to Vegas leaves you wondering, and if Jumbo Joe's on his way out, how close is San Jose to actually getting a Stanley Cup? And Ottawa. Their last Stanley Cup Final, 2007. Their last Conference Finals, 2017. And a no for Ottawa, obviously. And I know Ottawa fans are like, well, we got cups as the Senators in the 20s. Yeah, I know, but the NHL officially doesn't recognize that as being this Ottawa Senators franchise because it wasn't. That Ottawa Senators franchise moved to St. Louis. Those Stanley Cups, right here. The St. Louis Eagles is what the Ottawa Senators became, and then they folded. So, technically I could say, well, then St. Louis has Stanley Cups too, and then they have longer droughts between the two of them than Toronto, because the franchise that went to St. Louis had won Stanley Cups. What we're including here is the fact that Arizona was in Winnipeg prior to being the Coyotes. That's why they're on the board, because that franchise hasn't won a Stanley Cup since it entered the league in 79-80. So there you go. Which of these teams comes off the board next? Assuming that the Capitals come off, and they win, and they take Urinating Trees videos and just tear them up, because they don't care about Urinating Tree, which I think is wrong. But anyways, assuming they come off the board, who comes off the board next? Which of these teams that looks like an unlikely Stanley Cup champion right now proves everybody wrong? Again, my money's on Toronto. My money's on Toronto as of these teams that are on the board. They are the most properly built to win a Stanley Cup right now. And a close second goes to the Oilers, because while, yes, they had a poor year this year, they had an excellent year last year, and it's easy to forget that. When you look at what happened this year, it's really easy to forget it, and everybody seems to have forgotten it. They might get reminded as soon as in October if the Oilers get off to a good start. But again, let me know your thoughts. Who's going to win it next? And this is one of those fun things to do every year and see who's getting closer and who's getting further away. But hey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and that's after you drop a comment on who you think is going to win the Cup next. And I'll talk to you again soon.